Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. In today's episode, we're gonna see what it looks like when a sofa table and a server table cross paths and see what new creation they make. Coffeeed up, ready to go. Let's get started. Okay guys, we're gonna get started by just cutting and ripping down some of the pieces to start this build. We're using cherry. I've already planed most of the wood that I needed for this project, so it's just getting it to rough sizes now. This whole project started based on a conversation I was having with my wife on when we have people over. We didn't have an additional space that we needed to set out some things. A server table, if you will. And the challenge was we didn't want to have a dedicated table just for that. So we had to come up with something besides just a server table that would fit in our living room. So right now I'm actually gluing up the portion that's going to be on the tabletop for the sofa table. And while that is baking and getting set, we're going to rip a bunch of boards for the legs. I didn't have any stock that was 2.5 inches or so that I wanted for the legs, so I just wound up putting some together and creating it out of 3 plies of wood here. Alright, now that the legs are off cooking, back to the tabletop and just doing some sanding on this. And once I got that to where I wanted it, just throwing it back into the planer to get the other side cleaned. Okay, switching back over to the legs. Now that they've cooked long enough, we're cleaning them up at the joiner to get a nice flat side. Then we're going to throw them into the planer to dimension them down to the final size that I want. Here I'm just roughly cutting these to the dimension that I want so we can start marking them. And I'm using mortise and tenon for the construction of this. I remember when I had done my first mortise and tenon, that was about 25 years ago. I used the old school method of drill press, drilling it out to hog out that material, and then a chisel to clean it up and make it square. But now we've got these nice routers, so just plunge cut this and we'll make the tenon rounded over. there's multiple ways that you can clean up tenons. So one of them is just filing like I'm doing, or you can also take a chisel, and actually I did that with one of them as well. I guess I didn't film that one for you guys, but there's always multiple ways to do things when it comes to woodworking. So here I'm just getting ready to do a dry fit just to check everything out.
Well, there's the sofa version of the table. So we still don't have the server part yet. But you can see it coming together. So I'm just dry fitted right now, nothing's put together. So I'm just checking out to make sure the mortise and tenons are aligned and going in good. So for the most part they are. Got a little bit of shoulder work I need to do to allow these to set in there okay, but so far it's going pretty good. Still have the legs to put a taper on. They are not cut yet. Typically I like to do the mortise and tenons, get those all done before I will taper a leg. Just makes it easier to work with everything square. But right now you can kind of tell that these things are a little bit too beefy for such a light top. So it's only 5.5 inches or so, and then I've got a 12-inch deep tabletop, and that will complete the sofa table part of it. So the next phase will be to cut the legs, make sure everything fits well together, and then we'll work on the back part of it where we add the server piece to make this table fully expandable so that we can use it during times where we want to serve food and we need a little bit more space, about 18 inches, and that'll just flip up, and we'll go over the type of joinery I'm going to use for that and show you how to cut that. So let's get going on that.
Here we're going to go ahead and cut the legs to the final size because we're about to get to a position where we can taper those. So just marking that out and trying to see if it's going to be something that I like. Sometimes I don't know until I see something. I probably stared at that much longer than you saw there, and then finally had an idea of exactly how I wanted it to look. So once I did that, I needed a way to cut the taper. Now, several times I've just had a piece of board that I put on the table saw and just kind of fasten a board down at the taper I want. But this time I decided to make a little jig to help out. And it's just 2 pieces of wood with a hinge and a little stop at the top, and so I can set the width of how I want that, and that worked out great. Has a little deflection in it since it's just plywood. I think if I were to do something else to this, I would maybe add a little strip of aluminum or something just to stiffen it up a little bit, just to make sure it didn't deflect any at all. Now here you can see I'm just cutting 2 sides of my legs. Cherry really seems to burn easy, and maybe I need a new blade too, or maybe it sharpened. It didn't seem that bad, but cherry's known for that, so just throwing it right onto the joiner cleaned it right up.
So I just spent the last few minutes taking some time to mark out how I'm going to support the drop leaf on the Sofver table. And because I can't think upside down, which is which position the table is in, I made this little jig. So I decided to go with the option where it's got a little stringer in the back, or a spinner. I guess a spinner is a better word for it. And it's cut at 45-degree angle. You simply have this on a dowel, or I might use a bowl or something. Haven't decided on that yet. But you'll tap it and then it'll spin open like that. That will support the leaf. So it'll just turn and pivot. So I'll have 2 of those. And I use this to help me think about that since it's upside down, so I could get the markings correct. So I'll have one over here on this side and then one over here. So I'll have 2 of these spinners that will support my table. There are other options that you can use. You could have something on this back apron where you've got another piece that would be attached to the apron that would have a knuckle on it here that would just swing out and support that. So that's an option. There are other options where you could have an entire leg assembly. So you'd have just another leg like that that would pivot behind here and then just come out for however you wanted it. But I wanted to have it where you wouldn't really see anything else. So I thought the spinner would be the best option. Now I'm just trying to figure out, how do I cut this thing out and find the best way to do that. I tried to use the jigsaw on this, just butchered it and made a mess. So I'm not liking that solution because it's not clean. So what I think I decided is I'm just going to use the table saw and raise the blade. So let's do that.
I did need to clean up where the table saw didn't cut all the way through because it's round, obviously. So I just used the jigsaw to get to that final little piece to finish the cut.
Guys, I can't believe how well that worked. Putting the board on top of the table saw there and just raising that blade, wasn't quite sure how it would react, but it worked really well. So now I have the spinner that will just open up and close, and it'll work out perfect. And the way I designed this is you will push from the outer edge of it. So both of them are set to be opposite, so that when you reach in behind the table, all you have to do is push this side of it to spin it out to be able to hold the leaf. And then the other one does the same thing, so that you're not reaching all the way in to try to push it open. So yeah, this is going to work great. So excited to get this thing going and get it finished.
Okay, I'm working on the front apron now, and I'm trying to saw out the drawer that I decided to add in there. And I tried to use my super old circular saw from, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Batteries just weren't it back then. So I ended up at least getting plunged down through the cherry, but I had to end up using my jigsaw, my oscillating saw, to get that cut out because I couldn't do it on the table saw because the blade was too thick. I needed a thin kerf, but finally managed to get there. Guys, this is rare. The missus made an appearance in the shop. Normally she doesn't, but since this table was actually for her, she decided to make an appearance. So I put her to work. This is when it gets real. It's assembly time. So we're gluing everything together. No mechanical fasteners here, just good old-fashioned wood and glue holding everything together. Someone with a keen eye will probably catch the mistake that I made there. I had to go back and fix something, so if you notice that, drop it in the comments below. Okay, now we're on the tabletop, and this is the joint that we're using to put this thing together. It's called a rule joint, and it's a combination of a roundover on the center part and then a cove on the leaf. Once you get that cut, those two will match up and allow it to pivot just like this. Here I'm just putting in some sides for that drawer so that it's got some guides to just keep everything contained. Nothing fancy here. And since I was actually kind of designing this thing on the fly, didn't think about putting dados in the aprons. So pocket holes work just fine. Nobody's going to see those, and they've got enough strength. And then for the drawer, just did a drawer made out of poplar and just used a rabbet joints on that. So glues works just fine. It's not going to be carrying a lot of load, and turned out pretty nice. The front on it, I wrapped with just a little bit of a cherry strip. It just kind of sets it apart. Turned out real nice. Here we're working on the underside of the tabletop and leaf, and I made this little jig to be able to route out the mortise for the hinges, and then we're just squaring those off. And I also had to take the router and do a plunge cut for this little barrel on the hinge that shows up, so it would fall down in there so the hinge would be flush. So had 3 of those on this. Just drill those holes out, screw them in, and we're ready to lift off. All right, just applying a finish here, nothing special. It's actually a tung oil mixture with a few things to give it a little hardening. I think it's polyurethane. But this build took me forever, not because it was complicated. It had some few intricate parts to it, but just the season of life that was in. I think you've seen me in a beard, in winter clothes, in summer clothes. Of course, that all happened, it seems like, in the month of April here in Ohio. We had 40-degree weather and 80-degree weather, and there was just some days I didn't want to go to the shop. But I'm really satisfied with how this turned out. It's going to be super functional for us to display things behind the sofa, but then when we have guests over, we can pop up the leaf and be able to serve on that table. So it's going to be a great addition to our family room. Hope you guys enjoyed this. The best way you guys can support me is give me a subscribe if you like my content. That'll let me know to keep on building.